Ladies and gentlemen, meet Deadlock, my latest obsession and Valve's newest game. Before I get into the nitty-gritty, I just want to make it clear that this game is still in early development. So early in fact that there actually isn't even a public release date yet. So yes, before you criticize the game, bear in mind that what you're seeing here isn't indicative of a fully polished product. Moving on, what the heck is Deadlock, and is it any good? To put it shortly, Deadlock is a 6v6 third-person shooter MOBA blend. And if that means absolutely nothing to you, you're not alone, so give me a second to explain what I just said. First and foremost, Deadlock is a 6v6 game, which obviously implies that there are two teams of 6. But here's the thing, don't run into this expecting to have a constant and chaotic 12-player brawl. This isn't Overwatch. Thanks to the way this game's set up and balanced, you'll actually have the pleasure of experiencing a wide variety of combat situations. In a single round, I can guarantee you'll experience everything from intense 1v1s, tactical 2v2s, chaotic 3v5 clutches, and of course everything in between. Moving on, third person. This refers to the camera being placed outside of your character's body. This basically means you get to look at all your cool animations and in general just have a better flow of how things are. I probably don't need to explain this next one, but I'm going to just to make sure that we're extra thorough. Shooter refers to the fact that you get to pew pew, you know, kind of like Call of Duty, or more realistically Overwatch, since there are abilities and the character that you pick changes the weapon that you have throughout the game. But let's pause here for a minute. I'd like to make it abundantly clear that this game is actually a shooter. Nobody's trying to trick you. You can expect good aim to be rewarded here with stuff like headshots or damage that ramps up as you perfectly track a target, and that's not even the half of it. This game actually has an incredibly robust movement system with dashing, sliding, double jumps, and more. I swear to you, this game has movement and shooting that legitimately rivals even Titanfall. Lastly, MOBA. MOBAs are intensely complicated nerd games with all sorts of objectives, items, abilities, etc., and I honestly don't trust myself to talk to you guys about it, so I'm not going to. The best I'm going to be able to do is say, imagine League of Legends, except a lot less intimidating and a heck of a lot easier to digest thanks to the abundance of quality of life features. Now, to be totally transparent, the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I know the whole MOBA thing can be really overwhelming and a complete turnoff to a lot of people. So before you just tap out and say, GG's, this clearly isn't my cup of tea, let me say this. For starters, the foundation of this game is a shooter, and as far as I can tell, most people understand how the whole pew-pew thing works. Right off the bat, that is one less obstacle to jump over. On top of that, Deadlock actually has a dedicated community builds tab with full-blown guides and explanations as to how to build your character or what items to buy and when. For me, that's absolutely massive. In games like League of Legends or Dota, I'm usually sat there scrolling through some random website trying to figure out how my character works or what items I should have just for a chance of playing the game correctly. I guess the only question left to ask now is, will this be enough to turn a MOBA hater into a Deadlock fanatic? Only time will tell, but if I had to guess, I think the odds are pretty okay. Now for what's really important. Let's talk about gameplay. The average game of Deadlock consists of 3 stages: early, mid, and late. In each of these 3 stages, you'll have different objectives or goals to worry about, and each of these will influence how you experience the game. The early game will be centered around you collecting a currency known as souls. Souls are used to purchase items at vendors, or spawn if you're unlucky enough to be sent there early, and are one of 2 ways for your character to become more powerful. The other is by leveling up and upgrading your abilities, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Without going too overboard, there are 3 types of items: 2 that increase damage, and 1 that gives you more defense. Thankfully, these are color-coded and fairly simple to understand. Purple and orange equal damage, and green equals health, usually. Moving into the mid-game, things change up a bit. Chances are you've fought a little, acquired a handful of items, and are hopefully starting to do objectives. During this time, you'll want to focus on eliminating the enemy's defenses and breaking into their base. Technically, I should fill you in on what enemy defenses look like, but I promise you'll figure it out. Oh! Finally, to wrap things up, late game. At this point, all hell's broke loose, and the game's devolved into a series of chaotic fights. If your games go anything like mine, you'll basically just be team fighting over and over and over again until somebody finally wins. So if that gameplay loop sounds appealing to you, welcome to Deadlock. Now that you're at least somewhat familiar with what Deadlock's about, I'd like to deep dive just a smidge and further explain the more exciting things this game has to offer, and of course, why this game can truly succeed. At the tippy top of my exciting things this game has to offer list, I have a point about how simple and carefree getting into a game is. I know that sounds a bit silly at first, but if you give me a second to explain, I guarantee I can help you understand. Upon hitting the play Deadlock button, you'll be met with the character selection screen. Here, you'll have to pick at least 3 characters you'd be okay with playing, but feel free to select however many you want. Now, why the heck is this at the top of my list? Pretty simple, actually. The way they've gone about doing this fixes a lot of the problems that I have with character selection screens across various games, such as Apex Legends, Overwatch, League of Legends, etc. For example, let's say you really want to play Green Sludge Man, pretty much over everything anything else? Well, luckily you can turn his card purple, and this will let the game know that that is your top pick. The game will do its absolute best to find a match based around that preference. On top of that, an incredible benefit of the system is that it completely solves a lot of the unnecessary issues around having your favorite character stolen right out of your hands, or alternatively feeling robbed by someone with a faster computer, like in Valorant maybe. Anyways, after all that, you'll be put into a queue that quite literally instantly pops. Nice. After a short loading screen, you'll load in and be assigned to a lane. The word lane took me for a loop the first time I played a game like this, but don't worry. I think the simplest way to understand what a lane is by thinking of it as a territory. All 6 members on both your team and the enemy team will be assigned a specific area to attack and defend. And for extra clarity, this game actually goes out of its way to color code the lanes to make them just that extra bit easier. And if you're sat here thinking that the idea of lanes is a little bit silly, let me tell you why it's not. Deadlock's approach to the lane system actually helps streamline the gameplay by limiting the amount of player versus player encounters you'll have to manage, aka preventing overwhelming and chaotic messes. Moving on to exciting thing number 2 this game has to offer, let's go and talk about the early game again, but this time with a little bit more substance. Deadlock has a unique system where these cute little candle guys drop souls, aka money, and the only way to safely secure these souls is by shooting the soul once it comes out. Something that I haven't mentioned yet is that enemy players can actually shoot your souls and take them from you, which is pretty rude, but if you ask me, I think it's actually a fun back and forth as it incentivizes players to engage with one another in more ways than simply blasting each other all game. Quick little side note, can we talk about the designs of these dudes? The way their little candle shrinks as their health lowers is genuinely just 10 out of 10 design. I really do love them. On to exciting thing number 3, the incredibly cool objectives. They could have just slapped a funky tower down for you to shoot at, but no. We get giant spider teapots that blast you with fireballs, lasers, and giant stomp attacks that send you flying. Awesome. Unfortunately, I'm getting a little bit tired of the whole exciting thing number whatever thing, so we're gonna move away from that while still talking about exciting awesome things, like the heroes. Deadlock has some seriously cool and unique designs that burst with personality. It kinda has that TF2 awesome but goofy vibe going on, and that really helps draw me into the characters. That's not where it ends though. The lore pages and voice lines 100% match, and it's just genuinely perfect. It doesn't matter whether you're into robots, tough guys, quirky goofy monsters, or something a little bit more grounded, the game's got you covered. And if you don't see a hero that interests you right now, I'm sure that in a future update they might be added. The last thing I'll say about the characters' aesthetics is that I really respect their ability to make them pop without relying on eye candy, if you know what I mean. Staying on the topic of Deadlock's heroes, let's talk about how they feel to play. The first and most important point I'll make is that these characters are outrageously in-depth while somehow still being beginner-friendly. Personally, I think the decision to give reliable and powerful weapons to each character alongside the hasty movement system is to thank for why all of this works. Most characters have a blend of damage, utility, self or team buffs, and movement. And what's crazy to me is that they actually manage to retain a strong sense of identity despite there being a little bit of overlap and a little bit of jack of all trades stuff going on. I guess it's just a testament as to how well everything's combined. Now, I'm sure a question on the back of everyone's mind is, does this game have classes? And my answer is not really. As of right now, there isn't any strong identifier like support, brawler, fighter, assassin, etc., but those archetypes do definitely still exist, at least in some capacity. The last thing I'll add before wrapping up the roster section of this video is that each and every hero I've played so far has managed to be both fun and interesting, which is really what we should all care about. Alrighty, so as I previously promised to talk about, how do the guns feel? To keep it short and sweet, saucy. It's not very often that a third-person shooter manages to have engaging gunplay, yet Deadlock has done just that. If I wanted to be hypercritical, I guess I could say that not every character's weapon feels fully finished, recoil, gun models, etc., but generally speaking, the sounds, the way the hit markers work, the numbers, all that stuff feels really good. And I'll go ahead and give you guys a little treat. I know a lot of you are probably wondering what kind of weapons are in this game, so let me just show you. In Deadlock, you can expect to see shotguns, miniguns, blasters, bows, SMGs, finger guns, icy stapler guns, revolvers, burst fire boxing gloves. Yes, you heard me right. Assault rifle DMR sniper blends, goo guns, and of course, my favorite, interdimensional pocket sand. You're welcome. Now for the movement. Deadlock has a lot of it, but I'll preface this by saying that you don't have to worry as it's fairly balanced and quite predictable. But in order to explain why it's balanced and all that jazz, I'm gonna need to introduce you to how it works. Deadlock's movement system is built on the idea of stamina. Each character has a stamina bar that depletes upon performing movement actions. One movement equals 1 bar depleted. It's important to bear in mind that the amount of stamina you have will vary based on who you're playing and the items you have built. So yes, expect some characters to be a little bit more mobile by default. Something that's been really hard to do while making this video is avoid turning it into a tutorial, so I'm just gonna give you guys a small demo of what you can do with the movement as opposed to giving you a full-blown guide of push this button at this time and do that. So here we go. First up, your standard dash. This can be used in any direction and chained into into a slide. I guess it's also worth noting that your slide can be used at any time you're moving high speed or going down hills, such as on stairs. Next up, double jump. This is immensely useful and helps you mantle things consistently. This game is pretty darn vertical, so expect to climb onto rooftops, bridges, and whatever else to get the drop on your enemies. Last but not least, the dash jump. This one is my absolute favorite, but it does deplete your stamina. You know what they say though, everything that's good in life comes with a cost. All in all, Deadlock is a fantastic game that I highly recommend. Every time I hop on, I get this overwhelming feeling that the developers truly understand the game that they're creating because of how much it shows in gameplay. Everything from the map's design and how you can seamlessly flow through it using the movement system, to the way that items let you fulfill a variety of fantasies without even changing characters. Honestly, man, this game is just really fun, and that's all you've ever needed to know. Bonk! I love punching people.